Hello and welcome to Fall with RVs. It's time to winterize. Today we are going to be winterizing two different RVs. I'm going to show you some of the differences between RV types, different types of winterization techniques, and some things that you're definitely not going to want to forget to make sure that it's done properly. Let's get into it. All right, so today we're going to be winterizing two different RVs and we're going to be using Antifreeze. Now there are two primary techniques to use for winterizing RVs using Antifreeze, actually putting it into the lines, your water lines, so that nothing freezes, or blowing out the lines with air to make sure there is no water in the lines that can freeze. Now I prefer to use antifreeze in the lines for one primary reason, which is even if you blow out as much of the water as you can, there's a chance that you're still going to have a little bit in the lines, and if it drips to the lowest point in the line and creates enough solid water in there instead of just droplets, and it's usually at a hard point. A lot of times these use flexible lines, PEX, that won't really break if it freezes, but the hard connection points will freeze and can crack, and if that water drips to those points, you're going to cause some damage that will be very unfortunate to find out in the spring. I've seen it happen, and that's why I prefer to use antifreeze. Now, this stuff is what you're gonna need. This is RV and marine antifreeze. There isn't really anything special about any particular type other than this is propylene glycol. It's a non-toxic antifreeze. Never, ever, ever use antifreeze that you would put in the engine of a car, because that's ethylene glycol, highly toxic, will kill you. This stuff is propylene glycol. It still has antifreeze properties, but it's not going to kill you. So putting this in your water lines is what we need, because this could be consumed, a tiny bit of it in the spring. Of course, we're going to flush it out before we use the system, but it's not going to harm you.
If there's any trace.
If there's any trace of it in the lines, it's not going to harm you. Now, it does have a slight flavor, and some people don't like that. So I do say you can blow out your lines after you've put this in the system if you want to try to minimize as much of this in the lines as possible. But if there is any that drips into those low points, it's not going to freeze and you're not going to do any damage. So we're not going to be showing blowing out the lines today, because I'm not going to do that. It's a relatively simple process, though. You just need to find an adapter and use an air compressor, hook it up to your water inlet, and basically open your faucets one at a time. Don't pressurize more than 80 psi or so, typical water pressures, and you can just turn on the faucets once you got water in the system and let it blow out the antifreeze. All right, let's get started. And the very first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna drain our water tanks and our gray and black tank. Now, your water tank, you can just drain anywhere. There's usually a low point drain somewhere on the RV, but you can also pump it all. Usually turn on your shower, your faucets, pump it all into your gray tank just by running the pump until you run out of water, and then you can drain at a dump station. Now, we've already done this in this RV and the other RV, so we're not gonna show that, but that is the first thing that you're gonna wanna do. Next, once all your water is out, you're gonna wanna turn your water pump off and drain your water heater. Now, there are two different types of water heaters. Let's take a look at this water heater first and what that process looks like. So the first thing we're going to want to do is depressurize the water system. If you've run your tank out of water, there probably isn't any pressure in it, but turn the water pump off, turn all the faucets on, make sure there is no pressure in the system. Now we need to access the back of our water heater. Now, this is going to vary enormously by different RV types. A lot of times it's done from the basement of a motorhome or fifth wheel, but here in this truck camper, there's actually a little access door to the back side of the water heater here. Now, all RV water heaters are going to have a bypass valve on it, or a set of valves. What you're going to want to do is look at how the water comes in and goes into the water heater, and there's going to be two valves that you're going to need to throw, because what you're trying to do is stop the water from going into the water heater and basically bypass it altogether, because we are going to drain this water heater, and we don't want the antifreeze that we're going to put in the lines to go into the water heater. We're going to leave the valve or leave the cap open on the outside all winter long so there's no water in it, and we don't want to fill the thing with antifreeze either because it's going to consume a lot of antifreeze. Now there's one exception to that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but for standard water heaters in most RVs, this is what we're going to do. So in this one, there's 2 valves here. This one, we're going to throw this into this position. The water is going to now flow up and past the tank, and then this one is the into the tank, or the out from the tank. So the water normally goes this way, into the tank, and then out of the tank. Now we're going to block it, so it's going to go up through this pipe and then back into the RV. We've thrown the 2 valves, and the water heater is bypassed. All right, now relieving the pressure and bypassing the water heater is something you're going to do on both tanks and tankless water heaters, but this next part, draining the water heater, is going to look a little bit different depending on the type of water heater. We're going to take a look at a tankless in a second, but this is a tank style that is probably the most common on RVs. We're going to have a pressure relief here that I'm just going to open real quick, make sure there's no pressure in the water heater. Before you do any of this though, make sure the water heater is off and cool. Do not drain the water heater while it is hot. You can burn yourself, and it is going to have some pressure in it, most likely, even if you've depressurized everything else. So don't do that. Now this is the messy part. We're going to find the drain and put a socket on it. Now this is going to be a little bit different depending on the type of water heater, but there's always going to be a drain. You're going to go ahead and start to open that up. Now this is an aluminum tank without an anode, but on a lot of tanks you're going to actually find an anode in this, which means it's going to have a metal rod that corrodes going into the tank. And as you pull it out to winterize it, this is a good opportunity to inspect that anode and make sure it's not too corroded. If it's really corroded down to a little rod wire in the center, you're going to want to replace that in the spring.
We have an article about that we will link in the description below.
All right, here we go. Now, it's going to start draining. It's a real mess. We can speed this process up by opening this. It'll allow air into the top, and the water will really start to shoot out. We're going to go ahead and let it drain completely, and we're going to leave the plug out all winter long. I just set the plug inside there so I know where it is in the spring. All right, let's let that finish draining and go drain our tankless water heater on our other RV. All right, so now we're over at our 5th wheel, and we're taking a look at what it looks like to winterize a on-demand water heater. This is a Truma AquaGo, one of our favorite types of on-demand water heaters. Once again, make sure the water pump is off, you've relieved the pressure in the system, and you've bypassed at the back of the water heater. Now, again, tankless are going to vary. Some of them are going to have a little valve, or a little drain at the bottom. You're going to have to unscrew and drain out, similar to what we did over there. The Truma is really, really simple, though. It's a matter of just releasing this lever and pulling down on this valve, and the water is just going to pour out. This is a little strainer that you can just tuck over here in the side. One thing I forgot to mention is make sure the power is completely off both inside and outside for any of your water heaters, but the Truma especially, or any on-demand, because it will fire up the second you start to drain it. I love how this thing drains. It's so simple. Once again, we're going to go ahead and let this drain and move on to the next steps. Once this is done draining, we can just go ahead and close this up. Actually, we can do it now because it's mostly drained. There's not near as much water in these because they're tankless. This will continue to drip out for a little while, and nothing will freeze in there for the winter. Easy. Done and done. Onto the winterizing fluid. So now we're going to actually pump this fluid into the lines of the RV, and that's actually going to be done with the RV's water pump. Now, all RVs should have a chunk of hose that doesn't connect to anything near the water pump, and this is what is used to actually suck this fluid into the RV. What we're going to do is we're actually going to open your winterizing agent, and we're going to put this hose into this bottle, just like that. Then there's going to be 2 valves that you're going to need to throw. One to open this so that it can actually draw fluid into it, because it should not be open most of the time. And a second one to turn off the water flowing from the water tank. You're basically turning this into the water tank from the pump. So it's going to draw from this and not the water tank. Now, in an older RV like this, the valves may be really messy and just kind of back there, but you should be able to find two of them, one on this line and one coming from the water tank to the pump. We're going to go ahead and turn both of those. In this case, they're kind of hidden back here, and this is a real mess because we've modified this RV significantly. In newer RVs, a lot of times this is actually in the water bay itself. There will be just some valves that say Winterize. Sometimes it's just a single valve that you need to throw that does both of these functions at once, and then it is ready to suck the fluid into the system. It's going to depend on your RV. Take a look at your manual or instructions in the water bay itself if they exist. Open this one. Close this one. Okay, just like that. Now that we've got the antifreeze all hooked up and ready to go, all we're gonna do is open the faucets one at a time until we see that bright pink antifreeze come through the lines. I like to start at the closest line and work my way to the furthest. You might not know what that is in the RV, and it doesn't really matter. There can be spots where there are T's in the lines though, and you want to make sure that the fluid flows into all the places. I'm going to start here with the outdoor shower so we can see exactly what's happening. I can turn on the water pump out here in this RV. If you can't do that, you're going to have to go inside. Once it's pressurized, then we can open the faucets one at a time. I'm actually going to throw the water pump switch, turn it on, and we're probably going to see it suck that down almost right away. All right, here we go. Water pump on. You can see it start to suck it down, and it's pressurizing the system with antifreeze. Now we're going to go ahead and open both the hot and cold lines one at a time until we see that pink come in. Oh wow, it's there already. Actually, that was from last year. We never used this. And there it is. It's pink. See the hot line. There's the pink. Now you're going to have to check your antifreeze level. We've already used almost a gallon, so we're going to go ahead and switch to the second one. Usually you need at least 2 gallons, sometimes upwards of 4, depending on the size of the RV. All right, the antifreeze is still pressurized in the system, and we're going to start running it into the faucets, but we're going to disconnect and remove the kitchen water filter before we run any antifreeze into the system, because we really don't want antifreeze in our drinking water filter. I mean, you can, but you're really never going to get the taste out of it, and it's going to ruin the filter. So we're going to remove the water filter. This is also something that you're going to want to do if you have a fridge with an ice maker or a water dispenser. You're going to have to disconnect that, drain all the water, and remove the water filters from those systems as well. And then a lot of times they're connected with a 1/4 inch line. You are going to want to run antifreeze through that line to make sure that nothing goes wrong. A lot of times those lines will sustain freezing just fine, but better safe than sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this under sink filtration system that we have here, and just pull out the entire filter. I like to physically open up and remove the filter. Drain and pull out, and I like to leave the filters out for the winter. This is a reusable ceramic filter, but a lot of times you're going to replace these filters every winter anyway if it is a disposable unit. That will just dry out, and now nothing will freeze. This is off, and we're disconnected. Now we're going to go ahead and run both hot and cold in this sink faucet and look in the sink until we see that pink come in. So we're sucking all that antifreeze in through the lines, and there it is. And we can go ahead and shut it off so we don't have to use a ton of antifreeze. Now the hot. We're going to see it get clear. and then it's going to turn pink. I'm actually going to drain it into this sink because you want to make sure that you get that antifreeze into all the drains too, because this is going into the traps. I'm going to make sure none of our drains freeze in the pipes that are actually holding water in there as well. Now, one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drain a little bit of water from the water filtration system that I removed, so that there's antifreeze in that short line as well. It should only take a little tiny second bit here, so there it is. Now, the sink is winterized. Now we're going to go to the bathrooms, do the same thing. Now in this RV, we only have one more sink and a shower. We're going to go ahead and do the same exact thing in here until it turns pink. There it is. And on the cold, there it is. And now the shower. We've already removed the shower head in here. You can do it with or without the shower head in place. We're just going to go ahead and run the hot line. It's already pink. And the cold. And it's pink. These were very short because the run to the sink tees off of that line. And this is the point where it tees. So, all right, so for medium-sized fifth wheel, we took about 1.5 gallons, maybe almost, we're just gonna say 2 gallons for a 30-foot fifth wheel. One last thing that a lot of people forget to do is winterize the freshwater inlet. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a pair of pliers, looks like I need to replace this, and pull this little screen that can get really gross inside the water inlet. A lot of times I like to replace these anyway. Now, this little thing has been removed. Looks like it needed to be replaced anyway. It's pretty gunked up. Water inlets in RVs have a check valve because we don't want the water pump pressurizing the system to push water back into the city water or water fill connection. And all you have to do is press on the little button inside after removing that, and water will shoot out from the pressurized system. I'm gonna go ahead and use these pliers to press it in. I like to do this very last because we've made sure that there's water through the entire system, and it shouldn't take long to see antifreeze squirt out of this when I push it.
Woo! Yep, there it is.
And it's not resetting.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes things don't go as planned. That check valve probably needs to be replaced in this RV. I'm just gonna go ahead and try pulling it and making sure that it resets properly. Just like that. You have to turn the knob on. All right, it's leaking now. If you see your freshwater valve leaking, I got antifreeze in my mouth.
Good thing it's non-toxic.
Yeah, good thing it's non-toxic. You're gonna wanna replace that, so. All right, now it's holding-ish, okay.
Whew.
Another thing that I wanna note is in the spring, replace the freshwater intake valve on this RV. You can go ahead and pull your hose out and just leave it in there. You can leave it in winterizing mode so that in the spring, well, does it matter? Doesn't think it really matters.
You have antifreeze all over your glasses.
Antifreeze all over me. Oh, I just leave it in winterizing mode, and in the spring I just throw all the valves back to normal. To look at a different RV here, we're in our truck camper now, and we actually have a little access hatch for the water pump in this RV. Now, if you don't know where your water pump is, you're gonna have to find it, and it might be in kind of a weird spot. They're always different in different RVs. This one has the special, antifreeze hose, and it looks like this. It's clear in this one. Again, we're gonna put it into the jug of antifreeze, and this RV has just one single valve that both closes the water tank and opens the antifreeze all in one single turn. Now in this RV, I've installed the IRV WPC, the variable speed water pump controller, which I absolutely love. I've talked about this in a previous video that we'll link in the description below. This system is designed to shut the pump off if it senses that it's running dry. So in this case, we're probably not gonna have a problem with this, but it's possible that if you have installed or your system has a variable speed water pump, that you may need to cycle the pump on and off through this process if it decides to shut down because it's thinking that it's something's not right. But it is right. You're just doing the winterizing process.
You can talk.
Just like in the fifth wheel, we have a water filtration system in this. We actually have the Activa filtration system. I completely removed the Activa and let it drain. I actually made the mistake in the past of not removing it completely. I thought I had blown out all the lines, and this is where the water sat, and it broke a very expensive UV sanitization system. So I like to remove water filtration systems completely. And it should always have a valve to be able to shut it off so that you can remove it relatively easily. It's a little bit of a pain in here though, because it's kind of tight. I installed it underneath the stove. I'm gonna remove the Activa and make sure it's allowed to drain completely. There we go. Completely drain. It's very hard to get the water out of this unit. You might just want to take it into a warm space, but that's fully drained. I'm not worried about that freezing now. There we go. Now, just like before, we're going to let it run until we see pink. There it is. And pink. This is on our truck camper. Once again, you can see the little valve in there. We should be able to just press it, and it should just pop for a moment, like that. Yeah, this is the worst part. And you want to just make sure that it turns, that you get pink fluid coming out of it.
That looks pink to me. There's got to be a better way to do that.
There might be. You could always put a hose on it, or I don't know. You've got to release that valve to get the fluid to flow backwards out. I suppose you could pump it in somehow.
Somebody needs to make a product, or if you guys know of a product that makes that better, leave it in the comments below.
Now, we do have an external pump that we use to pump fluid into RVs. Usually we use a gravity feed, but we could pump it into here. You could always use an external pump to pump the fluid in through this port as well. But you do want to make sure that it makes it through the water pump as well. So that's why that specific hose is there, is that the water is coming from it. Now, there is a chance that there is some water between the water pump and the tank, and that's one of the reasons I like to make sure that you run the water completely out of the tank and run the water pump dry, because you've sucked all the water out and there shouldn't be any air or any water in that line between the water tank and the pump. And then from the pump onward, you've got antifreeze in it. So it should be completely protected. Any leftover antifreeze, I like to just pour down the drains because it adds more to the gray tank. If your RV has any special system like a SaniCon like this one, I also pour some antifreeze into this and make sure it makes its way back into the pump. So any water systems in the RV need to have antifreeze in them. Now, there's one more type of water heater I want to talk about, and that is a hydronic heating system water heater. We have one of those on our motorhome. This system is not getting winterized for us because this is coming to warmer climates with us, so we're not gonna winterize it. But what basically happens is inside the hydronic heating system tank, there is a coil. That coil cannot have the air or the fluid blown out of it because you will never get all the water out of it. You absolutely have to use propylene glycol antifreeze in these systems. You do not drain these water heaters. You actually put the antifreeze directly through the hot water system and leave it in there all winter long. I suppose you could blow it out if you want to get rid of most of it like we've done before, but you have to have the entire system antifreeze, filled with antifreeze before it freezes. Now these are similar to a boiler, and there is antifreeze in the tank itself, but that is not the water system. So the tank won't freeze, and it may be well below freezing, but the water inside it, kind of weirdly, the water inside the liquid will freeze. So always use antifreeze in a hydronic heating system. Otherwise, winterizing this coach is very similar. It's actually a little bit easier because it has a manifold, a mana block system, which means each individual water run is separate, and we can just open all the faucets and turn those on independently. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same as winterizing a standard RV with a standard water heater. You just have to run the antifreeze through these water heating systems. That is a AquaHot, Oasis, or HydroHot. There may be some other types out there, but those are the most common hydronic heating systems. Oh, Aldi, that's another one, although I'm not sure that heats the water. Those are the types of water heaters that we're talking about in these situations. All right, there we go. Both these RVs are winterized and protected from freezing temperatures. All we have to do is flush fresh water into the system in the spring, and everything should be fine. Now, we have lots of articles about this process with the antifreeze and the air compressor over on our website, more about water heaters, anode rods, lots of information over there. We're gonna put some links in the description below and hope that you check that out. There's a lot more things you gotta think about for winter as well, like rodents and storage. Lots of articles about that as well. As always, thanks for joining us here on Morton's on the Move. We have lots of other videos about our adventures in these campers. I hope that you check some of those out. Subscribe here on YouTube for future videos and to our newsletter over on our website, where we share all those helpful articles about all of these RV tasks. There's so many things you need to know about RVs. All right, we hope that you stay safe, and we'll see you down the road.